Want to again say good morning and welcome to our February coffee break. For those who have not joined, or maybe as a reminder for those who have joined our coffee breaks before, we do these monthly. The goal is to keep these informal, keep them small. We want to share and discuss some of the findings in the research that we're conducting. We'll be monitoring the chat for questions, but also in the spirit of discussing, feel free to pop onto audio or video to make a comment or ask a question as we go or at the end, whatever you're comfortable with. Today, we're going to be sharing a few key findings from our 2024 In-Plan Insights research program, which focuses on income options and defined contribution plans, the pretty heavy focus on options with guaranteed lifetime income, though not exclusive. So on the next slide, just want to thank our 2024 sponsors, the 7 companies that made this study possible in 2024. We are looking forward to working with many of you again for the 2025 study, and new input and new sponsors are, of course, always welcome. You can talk to Eric or I afterwards if you're interested in sponsoring the study. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the methodology that we're getting these findings from. So the In-Plan Insights program starts every year with qualitative research. We do some listening and some learning each spring, summer. We do 6 in-depth interviews with plan sponsors and 6 in-depth interviews with plan advisors or consultants. Then we do 2 focus groups with plan participants. They are split. We do one group with participants age 45 to 54 and another focus group with plan participants age 55, 64. Of course, the thinking there is that those age 45 plus are in the prime years to be thinking about retirement income. However, when we go into our quantitative phases that follow, our participant survey is about 1,000 participants, and the age range is broader. So we survey those age 30 to 70 when we do our participant survey. And when we do our sponsor survey, we capture the views of about 500 plan sponsors each year. And they run the gamut from 50 employees all the way up. And we make sure we oversample and have some representation of the larger employers with 1,000 or more employees as well. So like I said, we're going to walk through about 5 of the key takeaways from the 2024 study. And Eric's going to kick us off. Eric Sondergeld, Managing Director of Greenwald, is going to kick us off talking about some of the product preferences that we saw in this year's study.
All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lisa. I don't know if you mentioned that we have some color coding that you'll be seeing as we go through this. So when you see green, we're referring to results from plan participants. Blue is plan sponsors, and there's just a handful of results we're sharing today from the interviews with plan advisors. There is one exception, and I'll try to remember to mention it, where we don't follow that color coding scheme, but otherwise you'll see mostly green and blue, and that's participants and sponsors. Okay, so each year when we do this study, we present each of these audiences with a number of representative income options. They aren't designed to be any particular company's options, but they're designed to represent the types of things that are likely to be seen on the market, and we change them up each year. So we typically present those options with kind of in paragraph form. We name them, give a paragraph, say how much they might cost, and that's it. And this year we did that in the qualitative research. When the focus groups and the in-depth interviews, we provided that paragraph form. But we got some pretty strong feedback from some of the focus group participants, and even frankly some of our sponsoring organizations, to suggest, why don't we instead present the options in in grid form as we're showing here. And this is what we did for this year's surveys. And my guess is we'll continue something like this going forward to lay out the options in a way that makes it easier to compare them. It's still a lot to take in all at once, but I think it's better than just giving them long paragraphs to compare. So there were 4 options this year. There was one we called systematic income, which was kind of a new flavor of a systematic withdrawal, where this was actually a fund that makes the distributions rather than just an option where you can just have money sent to you. And then we had 3 options that had guaranteed lifetime income involved in them in some way. One was a fixed index guaranteed income option. That option similar to how a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal option on a fixed index annuity might work. Then we had one that we call diversified investments with guaranteed income. And we didn't define here exactly how the investments would work. And you'll see 2 slides from now what we did with that. But this was one that essentially had 2 components. One was a diversified portfolio, and the second was a component that provides guaranteed lifetime income. And then the final option was just your plain vanilla straight lifetime income type feature. And we provided representative pricing for all of them at the bottom as well. After they had a minute or 2 to kind of digest this, and they could always click back to see it again, we asked them, well, how interested are you in each of these concepts? And this left chart is very consistent year to year. No matter what options we show them, we get very high levels of interest. So here on the left, we're seeing that over 8 and 10 participants and sponsors are somewhat or very interested in each and every one of the options we showed. Then we asked them a follow-up question, and we say, okay, well, which of these do you think is the best fit for you, or best fit for your plan participants, if we're asking sponsors? And this year there really was no clear winner. Certainly among the plan sponsors, it was almost a tie between the diversified investments with guaranteed income and the fixed index guaranteed income at 35 and 31% respectively. And then for the the plan participants, 35% preferred just the plain vanilla straight guaranteed lifetime income, but 32%, which isn't far from that, also like the diversified investment one. What I think is also notable here is that the non-guaranteed, the option without guaranteed lifetime income was the least popular among both audiences, and that is also consistent with past results. So for that diversified option, we then had a follow-up question that we asked anybody who expressed even some interest in that option, if they'd prefer to have the underlying investment component be more like a TDF, a target date fund, described on the left side here, or something more like a managed account, as described on the right-hand side. And we got a definite leaning towards the managed account side, especially among the plan sponsors. And what's interesting is that in the 2023 program, we asked this same question, and the interest in managed account with guaranteed lifetime income is about 10 percentage points higher among both audiences than it was in the previous year. Okay, so this next section, we'll just want to share a few findings on the importance of offering choice. And we started asking these questions a couple of years ago because we're noticing that a lot of players in this market are bringing their single option to the market and trying to get plan sponsors to choose it. And one of our hypotheses is, well, does not having a choice make it more difficult for plan sponsors to pick the very right one? So we've been asking some questions around choice. Now, this is a busy slide. I'm going to primarily focus on the one set of bars that has the blue rectangle around it. So we asked plan sponsors how concerned they are about various things regarding offering in-plan income to their participants. And fourth on that list is ensuring participants have an appropriate number of retirement income choices. I'm not going to discuss the rest of this slide, but it'll be available afterwards. On this next slide, we asked them, excuse me, what would make them more comfortable or make income options more appealing to them? And second on that list was the ability to offer a choice or suite of retirement income options rather than just one. And then in a follow-up, we said, well, which two items would you find most impactful in making these more appealing to you? And the offering a choice rose to the #1 spot, as it did for larger employers with more than 1,000 employees. So both of those findings suggest we need to offer choice. And then we outright asked a much more direct question. First, I just want to mention that the vast majority of plan participants, 86%, say they would like their employer to offer income options in their plan. So we asked both audiences, so how many should there be? And almost no one said one, right? Nearly all said 2 or more options, with 2 and 3 being kind of the sweet spot in terms of what they're saying. And when we talk to plan sponsors, they say you need to have choice because not all participants are equal and people have different situations, so we have to provide choice. So we started over the last couple of years asking a lot of questions to try to understand what does the journey to income look like, starting from when someone, joins a plan in the first place, all the way through when they start receiving income. What I'm going to focus on in these next couple of slides are those aspects of the journey that might be made automatic. Okay, so in this first question, and we had a series of trade-off questions. This is one of them, and this is the exception to the blue-green color coding. So the top set of bars are participants, even though there's some blue on the right, and the bottom set are sponsors, even though there's some green on the left. What we did is we gave them these questions that had essentially two extremes on the left and right endpoints, and then we gave them a 6-point scale, which is an even number, so they can't pick the middle one and just sit on the fence. They had to at least lean in one direction or the other. And so on the left-hand side, we said that it's a completely automatic experience where participants are automatically enrolled in an option and income will automatically be triggered. They will have less control, but it requires little to no effort on the part of participants. And on the right-hand side, we described a completely manual experience where participants have to select things in terms of getting into an option with income and then selecting when income begins, and they have much more control over that. And both audiences were essentially split right down the middle, where about half said they prefer completely automatic and half said completely manual. This I think demonstrates that the journey to retirement income is not a single journey. Right? We have to build in the ability to support multiple journeys for different types of individuals and what their preferences are. And in a new question this year, we presented 6 different paths to income. And let me just kind of describe the left a little bit. And we gave them a table that looks very much like what's on the left-hand side of this slide. And each and every one of them includes people getting enrolled into the plan, saving at some level, into some type of growth fund. So that's the same in every single case. What could change is whether that fund also included income in it or not. And you can see paths A and C did. And then whether there's a transition to income for those that didn't have income in them. So either that transition is automatic or the participant elects to transition into income. And then there's also whether or not the income automatically starts or the participant has to elect it. And on the right column of that table shows how many decisions or elections the participant needs to make in that path. Anywhere from none for a completely automatic experience to 2, where they've got to make decisions along the way. And so on the chart in the middle, we asked which one they prefer, and we found some interesting things. So one is we found that sponsors favor paths that that put participants into a fund with income, but the participant gets to make the decision about when the income begins. But there's a whole bunch of interesting findings here on the right. So more than half of sponsors and nearly half of participants prefer one of the options that has income embedded in the option. A quarter of sponsors and a third of participants want to be automatically transitioned into income. More than a third and nearly 4 in 10 prefer a path that is completely automatic, right? As we saw that kind of 50-50 on that prior slide. And about half of sponsors and participants prefer a path where the participant makes that final decision to start income. And only about 1 in 10 prefer a path where the participant makes the election at each stage, which is very different from the 50% of both audiences that want a completely manual experience. When we actually lay out how this journey might go, we get a little bit of a different answer in terms of whether they want things to be more automatic or more manual. And then last on the journey piece, and also relevant to automatic, is whether once income begins, should the payments be sent automatically, or is it something where the participant needs to elect them essentially manually? And in the qualitative research on the left, it's clear that both sponsors and advisors prefer the income be automatic. In fact, in one of the interviews in the 2023 study, one of the advisors used the term mailbox money, that people like getting that automatic money every month, whether it's in their mailbox or in their checking account directly. And on the right-hand side, we asked both sponsors and participants if they think the payment should be made automatically or be initiated each time they're needed by the participant. And we got very consistent results that about 6 in 10 of both groups prefer automatic payments. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Lisa to cover the last couple of sections before we open up for questions, et cetera.
Right. I probably should keep going, but there's an interesting chat happening, Eric, around choice
Okay.
and choice squared up against automatic preferences. I'll make a couple comments. One in the chat mentioned, choices being confusing to participants. And I think we've seen that in the journey of this research. A year ago, 2 years ago, we tried in our qualitative to show our research respondents 6 different concepts. They could not do it. They could not absorb 6 different concepts, even with us walking them through it slide by slide. And we said, okay, we got to go fewer. We went right back down to 4. And 4 seemed to work, but as Eric mentioned, we heard this resounding demand from participants that we charted, that they needed to see this very consumer-friendly chart of features on and off, and that's how they were going to be able to absorb that amount of information. And so I do 100% believe that there's such a thing as choice overload, but I'm not sure that that 2 to 3 option, which is what they suggest directly, is going to create tremendous choice overload for them, right? That's the balance potentially. Choice and automatic is, it's different strokes for different folks, right? The people who want choice are the ones who tend to want a more DIY experience. The people who want more automatic tend to be okay with fewer. But also some things that we've learned in the qual, and also I think see in the chart on automatic too, is emphasizing the choice to allocate to income in the first place, and that there is a choice to trigger income. A lot of the folks we talk to in focus groups come in with the misperception that automatic means they will never get a say, right? And telling them that there are these moments in time where they will have a choice does seem to have a pretty big impact. All right. That doesn't leave me with a lot of time for our last couple findings, but I think I can do them quickly, and then we are happy to stay on and keep chatting with whoever wants to continue the conversation. One thing that we've continued to probe on in this study is language and the words that we use. This finding has been fairly consistent over the years. When we ask our sponsors and our participants, both in the qual, but here you're seeing our surveys, what should we call this category of option? Guaranteed lifetime income rises to the top, right? Followed by retirement income options. And it's always been Greenwald's suggestion that we run as the industry with retirement income options, because not all retirement income options are guaranteed lifetime income options, right? We want to leave some room in the category for non-insured options. Protected lifetime income options, you can see is number 4 for our participants at 12%. It's number 3 for our sponsors at 13%. And then down at the bottom are the options that mention annuity and the options that mention in-plan, which we are finding is not a term that resonates. Might need to change the name of our study. We also this year tested just some words and phrases, positive reaction, that's on the next slide, to different words and phrases. Guaranteed lifetime income, again, rises to the top, though. As you can see, almost all of these got sort of positive reactions by a majority. One of the things I see in the pattern here is that very active words and phrases, generates income, creates income, replaces paycheck, does seem to rise to the top above phrases like covering expenses and spending. And I know that's something we've debated a lot in this market, in this world, but it does seem to rise above. And then protected income, while many didn't think we should name the category that, does rate generally positive. Some other little things that we saw, we tested, it's the second to last bar there, views on comparing in-plan income, lifetime income to P&C insurance and P&C protection. And, 79% said this was at least somewhat helpful, but in the qualitative, we heard some really loud feedback about how, and this was before the fires in California, now is not the time to be hitching your wagon to homeowners insurance company. It's not the time to be hitching your wagon to P&C. It's a reputational problem. And then annuity income, still at 71%, is down there at the bottom. So a couple things we learned from our sponsors when it comes to the A word. 76% agree at least somewhat with the statement that even if these solutions are more appealing without the word annuity, it's easier to understand if providers use it. So we got to do the hard thing. We got to explain the rationale for something that maybe initially doesn't sound so appealing. Really encouraging, and in keeping with prior years, 8 and 10 of our sponsors say they want to learn more about how in-plan annuities are different than individual annuities. And more than 8 and 10 believe that annuities are, in fact, an effective way for participants to replace their paycheck. Right? So it's not all negative, and there is a strong desire to learn more. All right. Next section, a little bit on asset retention. We talked about that a lot in this space. First up, at the early part of both the sponsor and the participant survey, we ask our sponsors, what's your preference? Do you want the money to stay in plan? Do you want it rolled out? And here we can see half at the beginning of the survey, before they've seen any of these concepts and trade-offs and everything else, say, we would prefer to keep the money in, right? Sponsors want asset retention. But at the beginning of their survey, only 2 in 10 participants say it's currently my plan to leave the money in plan. Now, really encouraging on the participant side, at the end of their survey, after seeing these concepts and all the trade-offs and all the questions, 6 in 10 say, if I had an option like this, I'd be more likely to leave my money in the plan, right? So good news, we want these options to help with asset retention. It looks like they can certainly move the needle on that. But there's some other interesting things that we're starting to piece together as it relates to asset retention and stay in plan decisions, and that's on the next slide. So among our participants, I'm going to start bottom left. Half, or said differently, only half say they trust their employer to select an appropriate retirement income option for them. Only 16% strongly agree with that. So we've got some distrust among participants that their employer is going to be able to pick the right one. Then we have right above that 44% of participants who say, I want to move my money out because I just don't want it associated with my employer. Right? So these are important minorities. Then we see something on the flip side happening with our sponsors as well. New question this year. We see 6 in 10 sponsors agree with the statement, even though we care about our employees, we prefer not to be managing investments for retired plan participants. And honestly, Greenwald is guilty of this as any. We don't normally give our sponsors a chance to say something like that in a socially acceptable way. Right? We ask them how responsible they feel for the long-term security of their employees. And they all say yes, because they'd be real jerks if they didn't. But we don't normally give them an easy, a kind way to say, maybe I'd rather not. And 6 in 10 agreed with that, at least somewhat. Also, going all the way back to one of the slides that Eric shared with you at the beginning, that long list of things that might make sponsors more comfortable offering retirement income options. In the middle of that list, 30% of our sponsors said they'd feel more comfortable adding one if they didn't have to be responsible for the retiree, if they could hand off ownership of the retiree. And 30% is not a majority, but it's a healthy, sizable minority. And it's something I think just food for thought to think about, right? What if there is a small-ish group of participants who really don't want to stay with the employer? And what if there's a small-ish group of sponsors who really don't want to be responsible for retired participants? All right, so I'm going to stop there for questions. Like I said, we will stay on as long as it takes to chat with you all. Happy to. Any thoughts, comments? I haven't had a chance to check my chat while chatting.
Nothing new in the chat.
Nothing new. All right.
Well, I
Feel
never
free.
know. I never know what to make of this stuff, Lisa. You and I have talked about this before, and I think pretty consistently. And you see these surveys coming out. They're usually, unfortunately, sponsored by organizations who offer these products. So I can always take it with a grain of salt. Heck, the New York Times, they ran an op-ed by the CEO of TIA this week talking about the importance of this. I'm like, wow, normally you have to pay for commercial space. But I think that ultimately, I think this is hard stuff. This is complicated stuff. I think people just want it to be easy, which is why I always find that I want to have choice. As I said in the chat, that's the mistake. I think the annuity industry has listened to people, has tried to accommodate what they say they want, and then they don't take it anyway because why? It's too complicated and or too expensive. Well, you know what? That's what comes with choice. And so I have sympathy for the insurance industry trying to make this thing work because they keep listening, they keep offering, it keeps not being what people want. And I think ultimately people really just want it to be easy. And I think the notion, if I was a fiduciary, I understand I want to be able to have choices out there that I can make an informed fiduciary decision. But do I want to give that kind of choice to participants? I mean, maybe as a litigation shield, but other than that, I think it's just begging for trouble. I think it runs afoul of what I think people really want is they want somebody who knows what they're doing to help them make a good decision. I'm not sure that should be the employer. but I think ultimately that's what they want. And until the industry as a whole figures out how to do it, we're trying to run this game now where we're backing into it by embedding it in a target date fund. But I worry even the participants who are defaulted into target date funds understand what those are and how they work, and how many of them have opted for a through retirement glide path instead of a to retirement glide path. So to me, layering that into a target date fund is an easy way to force adoption, but I'm not sure that doesn't blow up at some point in the future. And I think the rollover of those current products, although I'm assured by people in the know that it's gotten a lot better, I think that, having gone through rollovers myself not too long ago, it's not easy under the best of circumstances. And I think this is just like one more complication. I can imagine my local bank, as I tried to explain to them a CIT product that has a piece of an annuity embedded in it. You can take that on, right? So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. But this is amazing stuff. Like I said, I appreciate you all doing it. I think at some level this highlights the problem, why we keep doing more and people still, the take-up rate still seems to be disappointing. So
it's an important topic, right? Because, and this is where I find the qualitative research so valuable, right? Just to sit virtually on a screen with these participants. You've got some participants who are quite honestly clueless, but they are the ones insistent that they want choice and that they know how to make that decision. And so it's really a big question of how paternalistic as an industry do we want to be, right? Or are we going to just admit that sometimes we got to let people make mistakes?
well, I think that's where the target date embedding comes in. I mean, the little descriptions that you all put out, I applaud. I mean, first off, probably nobody's going to let you get away with something that simple and easy to understand in the real world.
Research has a wonderful advantage of no compliance.
But those were amazing, if for no other reason, because you made some attempt to quantify the fees on it, which again, fees is the big question mark everybody has about these kind of products. But as I said, I think in many ways, just like the industry sort of gave up on trying to teach people how to be their own investment manager, and here come target date funds, I think we're trying to do the same thing with retirement income products. I do find the uptick in the managed account interest. I find that to be really interesting, and I wonder, managed accounts have, as you all know, have come on strong in the marketplace. Like in the last couple of years, a lot of the advisory firms are doing it. It is, let's face it, is a way for them to remain relevant in a target date fund focused world. So the cynic in me says that's why they like managed accounts. But that's a pretty big shift. I wonder, did you get any explanation for why that might be? Is it just people are more aware of it? Have they finally learned that target date funds are a blunt instrument and they want to do something more personalized? Because people are getting sued for offering, well, they're getting sued for offering a managed account that's really just an expensive target date fund. So so there's that.
I don't
Yeah,
think
but I think-
knowledge changed.
Yeah, so I don't think we have a true answer for why that increased, but I think you're raising some interesting points. Because on the one hand, there's this push towards hyper personalization.
Yeah.
Yet that means you have to have lots of choices you can then personalize, right? So what's the best answer? And part of me thinks back to the days in which, although it was never everybody, but it was much more prominent, that traditional pensions existed, right? There wasn't a choice, right?
Well, yeah, and by the way, it also didn't involve my money. So there's the other thing.
Well, yes, it didn't. It's correct.
Because I think that makes a difference. I think, again, some of this is a boomer thing, but I think some of it is when it's my money, I feel like I need to be able to have some control over it. Whereas in the traditional DB world, although technically everybody says I took a pay offset to get it, it really never felt like my money. So as long as I got my expected paycheck from it, I was fine. I actually think participants in 401k plans, if we could do a better job of telling them what that amount is going to be, and they got it, I think they'd be happy with it. I think people want simplicity, and I think we struggle with that. Lawyers won't let you, and I think the people pitching the products want to show off their knowledge, and and a plan sponsor wants to be very careful about taking on the responsibility to committing to something that they may not have any control over. And if I had personal liability, I would be too.
All excellent
Anyway.
points. So we are over time. I just want to quickly mention that this and all of our past coffee breaks are available on our website and on our YouTube channel. And if anyone's interested in learning more about the program and has some interest in joining us this year, if you're not already a sponsor, please reach out to Lisa, or maybe we'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Well, this is good stuff, guys. Thank you.
For those who have to drop, thank you. And anyone who'd like to continue the conversation, happy to.